Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another Toolbox Extra on the Educational AD podcast. We're going to be right back with this week's Toolbox Extra guest, but as always, we're going to give a shout out to our sponsors. Now, you've heard me say before, these are all great companies. You should be using them. So take 3 minutes, listen to our sponsor shout outs, then listen to our Toolbox Extra guest, and then go and visit these sponsors. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you did. Here we go. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Sideline Interactive Indoor Score Tables and Video Boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and you can schedule a live web demo to see their products in action. Probably one of the best equipment purchases I ever made was our Sideline Interactive Indoor Score Table. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule that live web demo today. We also want to say thanks to our friends at Huddle. You know, as a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an AD, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school. And our coaches, our student athletes, even our parents just loved the tools that Huddle provided. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. That's huddle.com. We also want to say thanks to Beacon Creative and Vital Signs Wall of Fame. Now, the Wall of Fame has been helping schools bring their legacy to life for over a decade, but Beacon Creative is a new content creation service. It's going to take your data and create compelling stories that you can then share on your digital platforms like Wall of Fame. I want you to email John Townsend, and you can do that at John, John, at beaconwalloffame.com. Check them out today, Beacon Creative Wall of Fame. Let's also say thanks to our friends at Home Campus. Scheduling, rosters, results. How about facility management, athletic eligibility, and clearance? These platforms are game changers for an athletic director, and you can find it all at homecampus.com. That's it. Go to homecampus.com, and don't forget to mention the podcast. We also want to say thank you to Hometown. Hometown continues to be a leader with schools with their suite of solutions that includes things like, well, digital ticketing, athletic website construction. How about fee-free fundraising? The list just goes on and on. Go to hometown.com, whether you're a principal, an athletic director, or even a head coach. Hometown is going to show you how to save time, how to raise more money, and how to bring your community together. You'll find it all at hometown.com. Let's also say thank you to our friends at Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. My assistant athletic director, along with thousands of others, got his master's through the Ohio program, and while they were earning their degree, they also completed 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. Check out Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. Let's also say thanks to one of our new sponsors, Booster Hub. It's the #1 booster club software. You need boosters who can deliver results, not create headaches. And a weak system, along with volunteer turnover, can leave your program vulnerable. Booster Hub takes care of all that. Sponsorship payments, meal fees, concession sales. It's going to go through one secure system. When volunteers change, and that happens in booster clubs, nothing falls through the cracks. Your funding stays strong, fraud risks stay low, and your community will stay engaged. Booster Hub also handles communication, volunteer scheduling, and online spirit sales. And this gives your boosters more time to support your program as fans. Give your boosters the platform they need to truly support your athletes. You can learn more at boosterhub.com. That's boosterhub.com. We want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to Gipper.com and let their team turn you into a social media marketing guru. Engage your community across all social media platforms, along with email, touchscreens, on-campus TVs. Gipper's used and trusted by over 20,000 schools and districts, and it's going to help you modernize your online and on-campus marketing. Your school's doing great work. Don't let it go unnoticed. Let the team at Gipper help you. Go to Gipper.com to get started. And finally, we want to thank Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. At my school, we use surveys for everything: student athletes, coaches, even parents. And the information that would come back on these surveys was incredibly valuable. We still got to hear from our squeaky wheel parents, but the surveys allowed us to hear their concerns, usually address them before they turned into something big. But going back to the positive feedback on the surveys, incredibly valuable, especially when you're visiting with a frustrated parent, maybe your principal, sometimes even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. That's athleticsurveys.com. And as always, don't forget to mention the podcast. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Toolbox Extra on the Educational AD Podcast. Regular listeners are certainly going to recognize today's guest, Troy Ferguson. Troy is a certified Master Athletic Administrator. He's the Director of Athletics at National Trail Schools. That's in New Paris, Ohio. Troy first came on the podcast, I'm going to guess, got to be about 2 years ago, when he was one of our small school athletic directors. His thoughts and ideas are in that book, Small School AD. He's since been on the podcast. He's had his own interview. If you've missed it, you need to go back and check it out. But Troy Ferguson, welcome back to the Educational AD Podcast.
Thanks, Jake. Excited to be here again.
Well, for our listeners, we're recording this on January 13th, so it's going to be pretty timely when you listen to it. Troy, you and I were talking at the national conference just, I guess, about a month ago now, and congratulations on your school earning, and you as an AD, earning the Quality Program Award from the NIAAA. Certainly, I think one of the most prestigious awards that a high school athletic department can earn. I was wondering if you'd be comfortable kind of sharing with our listeners how you, I guess, got the idea to, go for it. What was your inspiration, and maybe share some of the stops along the way.
Absolutely. So it started probably 2023, I think it was. I went through our Ohio OIAAA, and in Ohio we do I'm going to say a watered down version, probably not watered down, but like a skinny version of the QPA. It's called the Bruce Brown Award of Excellence. And that kind of got me rolling on it as I went through that process with Randy Tevapal from Northeast Ohio. It kind of going through that process of that Bruce Brown and realizing like, hey man, like we're doing some good things, but also like, man, we are really missing the boat on some other things. And I think for me, it was a chance to reflect back. And once talking to Randy through that process, he encouraged us to pursue the QPA. So that I completed that Bruce Brown, and then a couple months later, I said, I've already got all this information. I've started. Let's keep rolling with it and take the next step with the QPA. And I think for me, part of that, you and I were talking beforehand, like there's only been like 5 other schools in the state of Ohio, 6 other schools in Ohio that have completed it. So to say we're one of a small handful of schools in the state of Ohio that have done this and have gone through the QPA process was also kind of cool experience, I think, to be able to say that to my school board and my superintendent and our community, like, hey, we've done this. This is what it means. And I think that was for me also an inspiration to do it too. But like I said, I had some of the work already done through the OIAAA, and then going into the QPA. It was, I was in a cohort led by Scott Jarvis, and we went through that for, I think it's 10-month process. We would meet once a month. I think that's part of the hesitation for me was 10 months is a long time. There's a lot that goes on in an 80s world in 10 months. And I was a little hesitant in that regard, but I'm glad I did it. I'm glad that we had the chance to go through this as a district and kind of see like, where are we doing well, but where are we not doing so well? And that really gives you a chance. I think for me, the QPA is about that reflective process of, hey, good, not so good. We've got room to grow. And I think if anyone's considering going through the QPA, I highly recommend it. I would also highly recommend doing it with a cohort because I feel like that made the process a little easier because you get to share ideas with everyone. And, I can't imagine what it would be like doing that on my own. We're not sharing ideas and sharing processes with others. Be a little, I could see that would be a little intimidating. But I think it's definitely worth it in the end. And it, it was a good time to be able to see those things and share the exciting things with others that we're doing and hear them say, oh, I really like that, or have them reach out following a cohort meeting, be like, hey, I really liked what you shared. Could you share that with me? And I think that's the benefit of doing it through the cohort, is having those others to share ideas with as well. So
Right. And you bring up a couple of great points. Number one is I think the prestige, which is not a bad thing, of achieving that QPA is not to be undersold. It's still it's something that's attainable, but at the same time, you need to put in the work and the time to show all the great things that your school and your program is doing. And it is quite a unique, I don't want to say unique, but it's quite still a rare achievement. You also mentioned that you can do this on your own. You can sign up through the NIAAA and start the procedure of checking off and submitting the components of the QPA, or like you did, you can do it through one of the NIAAA cohort programs, where pretty much each month you're working on and then checking off a box, and by the end of the cohort, you've completed your QPA work. For somebody who might not be familiar with, let's say, the different categories of the QPA, and I'm not going to quiz you on this, but can you just share some of the different categories where and maybe focus on one of those categories about how you went about gathering the data to kind of check that box?
yeah, so there's 10 different categories. I'm glad you're not quizzing me on them because I don't remember all 10 of them. But I do know one was basically dealing with your athletic trainer and making sure that I don't remember the exact name of the section. And the reason that one stands out for me, because as we were going through this process, making sure you have your emergency action plans and all those things in place. And we had them, but we didn't really do anything with it. Like, no one knew where it was except for the trainers and I. So to make sure, and our coaches knew it, but they didn't really practice it. So like putting those things into place and making sure that it's not just a document that we have posted on the wall or whatever. Like, we actually start trying to get our coaches to practice, hey, do you have a heart attack, heaven forbid, during practice? How do your kids respond? There's no trainer there. What do you do? How do those things look? So that, it's just like anything else. If you don't drill it, you don't know what to do when it actually happens. So during that process, we had put out our emergency action plans at all of our facilities. We have like aluminum signs that we put out with it on there on a condensed version, and then we have a QR code with it that you can scan on your phone, and it'll take you to our athletics website where it has the actual full document there, so you can see the whole thing. But during this process, we had a baseball game where the opposing team's bus driver actually had a heart attack during the baseball game. And having those things where our spectators, they see it, they kind of read it, but then when they actually had to do it, I had a couple of parents thank me afterwards that we had those things in place. So that was one of those like real world, like holy cow type things for me. But I think going through the process of the QPA and the Bruce Brown Award, definitely helped us be prepared for when that happened. Um, Fortunately, I can report that the bus driver survived, and we had an AED right there, and our athletic trainer and I were on site, so that definitely worked out. And he's doing well now. I think he told us he had like quadruple bypass surgery about 6 weeks following his heart attack. So, but it if we hadn't gone through this process, we may not have had those things ready. And looking back, like that's just one of those things. I know that's kind of an extreme example, but like it's an example of what one of the things that we got through this process that benefited us and benefited obviously it benefited the bus driver as well for us to be prepared. So
Oh, no, absolutely. You always talk about you want your emergency action plan to be, a living, breathing document, and no pun there intended
yeah,
on the heart attack, but
yeah.
that's a great example of the document in action.
Mhm.
I shared with you that a few years ago I actually started the QPA at our school, and then COVID hit, and of course I never finished it. That's my excuse. But I remember at that point, one of the final sections, we were just kind of completing it, if you will, was the section was the section on school board alignment. Okay, and we were a private school, and so we we had kind of, it was understood that the board supported us, but there was nothing in writing about our athletic manual, our athletic policies, our board approved. Um, Looking at that section from memory, of course, for you, was that a challenge to complete that? Did you have board members that were, hey, what is this, or did it go smoothly for you from memory?
Actually, that part of it was fairly easy for me because this is my fifth year as the AD here. I've been here for 21, and I spent like 15 years prior as the assistant AD. And we've been fortunate that all of our superintendents, everything we do athletically, if it's a handbook change or a ticket price change or anything like that, everything's getting board approved anyways. So most of those things that we had to have, at the bottom, it says board approved on a whatever day it was. And so that part of it was actually fairly easy. And that's one thing I think um, I would say I appreciate about the superintendents that we've had here is making sure that we do get our school board supports athletics and making sure that we also have them verify that what we're putting out to our parents and our students has been at least seen by them. It makes our job a lot easier. Um, and so yes, that part I was fortunate, I guess, that
Okay.
that's been a past practice for years. So
And that's a good lesson for all of our listeners to, if you're not currently on that path, make sure that you're keeping your board members in the loop and that you do have that stamp board approved policy. You mentioned handbook, you mentioned parents, and something popped up as you were reviewing documents. So reviewing, athletic manuals, coaches manuals, things like that. Did you find anything that was written that was kind of a surprise? You're going, whoa, I didn't know that was in there, and we need to maybe change or edit that. It's always that nightmare. Let's say you're dealing with, a suspended student or something like that, suspended student athlete, and the parent takes a deep dive into your handbook and they find something that you're saying is a rule, but your handbook says it's not a rule. Did you find anything that you said, wow, we need to change this?
but we had one, and I'm going to go back a little bit to the last question also. So like I have to have my handbooks board approved every May for the following school year. So we typically have my coaches and I skim, or I shouldn't say skim. We read through it and we make changes accordingly. So there wasn't a ton of that, but there was one that we caught where we had a rule: if you quit a sport, you couldn't do anything with any other sports until that sports season was over. Well, being a small school, we have kids that play multiple sports in a season. So how do you handle a kid that's playing two sports but quits one? How does that affect the other sport? So that was one thing. I wouldn't say it was like a caught us, but like it definitely made us go, okay, like how do we handle that? Like what is the right method or what's the right procedure to do in that instance? And so that was definitely one of the things I would say that we had to look back and say, okay, what is the right way? Um, I don't remember off the top of my head what exactly we changed it to, but we did change our procedures because of that. So again, just one of those things like we thought we were doing okay, but when you take that deep dive that hey, we do need to tweak this or change that. So again, just I think that's what the QPA is about to me was just looking back into it, taking, like you said, taking that deep dive into our handbooks, into all of our documents, and seeing if we are saying what we're saying we're doing, is that on paper or is that in all of our processes? Are they, if something happens to me, does the next person, or if I, you know, left the school, does the next person know what to do? And I think that's another benefit is now we have all those things, we have all those processes, we have all those documentations that that I feel like the next person at least would have a head start if I were to leave here. So
Oh no, absolutely. Um, Kind of a sidebar question here. As you part of the QPA, it's manuals, it's forms, it's how you operate day to day. It is that deep dive into all the rules and policies and regulations, um, and it's not necessarily a right, wrong, good or bad. It's how you, in this case, National Trail, chooses to roll. Um, would you say that your handbooks, student handbooks, coaching handbooks, parent handbooks, would you say that the content is more comprehensive, trying to cover every, and these are my words, every imaginable event, or is it more of a general nature, so that if a violation, I'm using my air quotes here, occurs, that
hmm.
you and the school, the principal, the board, et cetera, have some wiggle room regarding a situation, both coming down strong and maybe not coming down as strong. Am I making myself clear on that
Yeah,
question?
yeah, I think so. I think for I think it kind of depends on sections. I would say there are some things in our handbooks where it's black and white. And then I would say there are some instances where there is some gray, um, that gives us that wiggle room. I know there's a couple times in our discipline if it says at the discretion of the athletic director and principal, or athletic director, principal, and superintendent, depending. So there are some of those in there, but there's also some where there is no wiggle. This is it, and I think that's helpful to some because there are some things like this is it. This is how it's going to be. But I think there can be some instances where yes, you did this. There's some gray area in there. Let's figure it out. So
Um,
I would say there was a mix of both in there. That
no,
if
and,
that
and
makes
and
sense.
that makes sense. I'm just curious, and you're absolutely right. There are some things, for example, like sportsmanship and ejections and things like that. That's going to be pretty black and white. There might be other areas of that handbook where it is intentionally, a little more gray to allow for some interpretation and some judgment, by the athletic director or principal, et cetera. Um, you mentioned that every year that the athletic manuals have to be submitted to be board approved, and you talked about how your coaches are involved with that. Is that everybody on the coaching staff? Is it just head coaches? Is it selected people? How do you involve your staff in that ongoing evaluation process?
Yeah. So I make every about March, I make it a Google Doc. Our existing one is like a Google Doc, and I give our head coaches editing access and just tell them like highlight in yellow or green or whatever, things that, this is something I would like to see changed, or this is maybe we need to add this. And then, depending on what it is, they highlight it a certain color. I think just because for me, it's really difficult to get all of my head coaches together in one spot at the same time. I found that if I can just make that Google sheet, they have access to it at their convenience, and they're able to just kind of read through it and make those things or make ideas or suggestions, or hey, I see we're doing this, but this came up, what if we do this instead? And it's one of those things then where I could have a conversation with that coach and ask them, I saw you did this, or I saw you had this recommendation. Tell me more. Um, and I say that as a Google Doc, going back to, we have 17 varsity head coaches. Of those 17, I think 2 of them actually work for us here in the building. So it's really hard to get those other 15, 14 schedules to mesh, to get together. And, our handbook's pretty long. So I feel like the Google Drive or the Google Doc has worked well for us. Just, it also gives the other coaches an idea. They can look through there and say, oh, I see baseball coach made this recommendation, but I like that, but I also would say this. So we got to get to have some dialogue, but it's through text, not really in person. So that's kind of what we've done the last, I think, 2 or 3 years. I started doing it.
It's boy, it's great that you involve all of them, and that's a great it's almost a Tech Tuesday tip. Having that shared document that the other coaches can get involved with, and again, being off campus, that saves them the time and the hassle of having to come in and doing a group thing. Very cool stuff. Troy, you yourself, you have your CMAA. That doesn't happen by accident. You went the next step, and you've been involved in cohorts. You've got the QPA for your school, involving your coaches. Obviously, professional development is a big part of your program. What are some things that you do beyond what you've already shared for your coaches in the area of professional development? Certainly, that must be a challenge with, as you mentioned, only a couple of coaches actually being on campus.
Yeah, and I think as I went through this QPA process, I think I pinpointed that as one of the things we have to get better at. And I think part of that, I heard this comment somewhere. I don't, it may have been through the QPA process. Coaches are, they're content experts, like they know their sport, but because they may or may not be a teacher, if they're not a teacher, they may struggle sometimes with the delivery of that content. So the quote I heard was, coaches are content experts, but not delivery experts. And I think that kind of stuck with me just because, like I said, we have so many non-teaching coaches. And so that's one thing I really, like I said, through this process of kind of pinpointed as an area we have to improve. Currently, we do the Inside Out program with Joe and Jody. We've done that. I think this is year 3. We review that with our coaches. That's one I do try to get all of our coaches together in the summertime. I try to do like a Sunday evening just because there's fewer things typically going on. That we do get most everyone to attend. I try to get our assistant coaches to that as well. I give pizza just because, everybody will come if there's food. And we go through the Inside Out process and what does that mean? What is our purpose? Why are we doing this? Not just because we like to be around kids or we like our sport, but what is our true purpose of doing this? And because it's not an easy job. Being a coach is not easy. And if they lose sight of that, sometimes. Thank you. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It wouldn't be a podcast if we didn't have phone calls and announcements coming through. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we do the Inside Out process, going through that, and each coach has a chance, then they get a QR code that they can scan, and they just put in their purpose statements and kind of looking back and reflect on why is it I'm doing this, and so we do the inside out process. Um, and then other really than that, it's really just we send our coaches to their coaches clinics and try to make sure that they're attending clinics. But obviously, as I've gone through this, there has to be a little bit more. And I think that's one of those things where I've decided like, hey, it has to be, I can't do this as a big group because we struggle to do that to get our coaches in. So maybe it's meeting with just one team. If I can meet with all the football coaches during the winter, it's a little less crazy for them. So I can meet with them during the winter, just and finding those off season times for those coaches and staffs at work. And yes, it's more work for me. But at the end of the day, if I can get them better trained and prepared for the things they have to do with away from coaching most of the time, then it can save us all a little bit of headache and all a little bit of work in the long run. So that's one thing we're working on currently for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Well, great stuff. Again, good examples for anybody, small school or big school. Um, Troy, if one of our listeners wanted to reach out and pick your brain a little bit more about your experience with the QPA or just how you run things at National Trail, what's the best way that they can connect with you?
sure. My email address is tferguson. It's FERGUSON at nationaltrail.us. That's probably the easiest and best way to get a hold of me. We're on all the socials. It's at National Trail AD. So those are probably the best two ways. Um, I check my email frequently. I feel like too much probably sometimes, but yeah, that's probably the best way.
Yeah. And you can find Troy's information on LinkedIn. He's also on the NIAAA membership portal. Well, Troy, congratulations again on being one of the more recent QPA earners. All the best moving forward, and we're definitely going to bring you back on the podcast so you can share with our listeners down the road.
Sounds good.
For our listeners, we want to say thanks to you and remind you that we upload the Zoom recordings of all of our interviews to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do Toolbox Extra just about every week and just about every day. We try to share stories and best practices from the world of athletics. So please come back and join us again on the next episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time. Before we go, we want to say thanks to all of our great sponsors one more time. Let's say thanks to Booster Hub. It's the #1 Booster Club software program in America. Go to boosterhub.com. Athletic surveys by LifeTrack. If you're not taking a survey, you're really missing out. Go to athleticsurveys.com. We want to thank Home Campus. It's a platform you're going to use every day. Go to homecampus.com. Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Beacon Creative, Wall of Fame. You can check them out, vitalsignswalloffame.com. Gipper, become a social media marketing genius. Go to gipper.com. Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. Check them out. Hometown, the #1 digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. You'll find them at hometown.com. And Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle. As an AD, we were a Huddle school. Go to huddle.com to get started. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.